Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Welcome to Morning Shot. I'm Ahmad Akhtar. In just the past week, fires have broken out in Topayo, Balestier and Bukit Permai, part of a troubling trend that's seen fatalities climb in recent years. From faulty batteries to kitchen accidents, the risks are varied and often overlooked until tragedy strikes. But beyond fire safety, there's also the question of accountability. What rights do residents have if their homes are damaged, whether as victims or neighbors? Who bears responsibility when lapses in safety or maintenance make matters worse? To help us unpack both the human toll and the legal side of preparedness, we're joined by two guests. Let me first welcome David Sun, crime correspondent at the Straits Times. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
He is joined by Justin Chan, managing partner at Justin Chan Chambers LLP. He specializes in civil litigation in the building and construction sector. Justin, good morning. How are you?
Morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, both of you. David, start with you. Fire-related deaths on the rise in Singapore. I feel like I'm seeing a new headline almost every day, so the frequency is quite alarming. Numbers this year already outpacing previous years. From your reporting, what you've seen on the ground, what's driving this increase?
Well, I think we see a trend of more PMD fires. I think initially in previous years, we kind of dealt with that problem slightly better and the numbers went down, but we see that creeping back up again. So, in the first half of this year, we have already seen 20 such fires compared to 10 in the same period in 2024.
When you say PMD fires, you mean from charging a PMD battery, right?
Most of the time you would think it's because the battery is being charged, but in some instances, it seemed that the batteries were not even being charged. They were just unplugged and left there, and they somehow caught fire.
And most of these incidents are occurring in high-rise living environments?
Yeah, and housing board flats are usually where these incidents occur.
All right, we'll get into that more in a bit. Justin, bring you in now. When a fire starts in one flat, let's say from charging a PMD battery, as David just alluded to, or from unattended cooking and spreads, who can actually be held responsible for damages to neighboring units?
Well, I think the person who has performed that sort of negligent act would be responsible. But you would need to show that it is negligent, and you must show that person, your neighbor, has a duty of care to you. And number two, that he breached that duty of care and that breach has caused the damage to you. So, for example, if I am baking cookies and I have been completely safe in the baking of cookies and a fire starts in your home, then whatever I did not cause your damage. So there's that question. You must establish negligence first and foremost.
Who does the burden of proof fall on in a fire incident with electrical lapses, for example, Justin?
In all civil litigation cases, he who asserts must prove. So anybody who says, my neighbor did this, the burden of proof lies on that person that my neighbor did this.
And does it make it harder for the victim to win compensation if it cannot be proven? Say if the house has been gutted to such a degree that you can't find the evidence?
It can be, but one of the main driving forces behind litigation and building and construction is the expert report. So the person who has suffered this loss has to seek out an expert, whether it's a building surveyor, a mechanical and engineering expert, a professional engineer. You need this professional to come in and tell you what he thinks actually happened. And I think they're skilled enough to sort of like forensically look at the damage. Was it caused by a PMD fire? Was it caused by a stovetop? I think from the layman's perspective, it's very hard to pinpoint the cause of the damage like you pointed out, save for this expert report.
All right, fair point. David, what do we know about the biggest household fire risks today? You've obviously mentioned PMD batteries, clutter, cooking. Are these still the main causes? I've heard also about unplugging electrical appliances from sockets when they're not in use, especially before bed or leaving the house. How plausible is that one?
So, yeah, like you said, PMD fires are a big thing. I think we've also seen a bunch of fires stemming from cluttered homes and walkways. So those are pretty dangerous. But, there are some tips that, you can pay heed to kind of protect yourself from certain risks or fire risks. So for one, turning off cooking appliances and unplugging them when they're not in use actually does help because, it's not on. And, keeping flammable products away from heat sources. These are pretty common sense stuff. And don't overload your electrical outlets. Don't leave your batteries charging unattended. So these are the very basic things that you can do. On top of that, you can also have a fire extinguisher at home, a fire alarm at home, smoke detector at home. All these little things, they kind of add up, and they can help keep you protected.
All great tips, but how much do we really know about basic fire safety and evacuation, especially in high-rise living environments? I mean, how much attention do we pay to these safety and evacuation standards?
I think for most people, especially if you live in high-rise buildings, you may not go to all the different floors in the building, and so you may not even know about this thing called a refuge floor. So a refuge floor is actually like in the middle of a very tall building where you can go there and you can kind of stay away from the fire in the event of a fire. A lot of the high-rise buildings have this built in, maybe except for the older ones, but for newer blocks, they all have this.
All right, fair point. Justin, what are the realistic legal routes residents can consider? Can they pursue action against HDB, contractors, or estate managers if there are lapses in safety measures or building maintenance?
The short answer is yes, but the difficulty lies in identifying who's the proper defendant here.
Yes.
For HDB estate, the common, in most cases, the common areas, so void deck, corridors, things like that, those are managed by the relevant town council. That is one possible defendant. Second possible defendant are specialists, are contractors which have been retained to do certain tasks. For example, install the wiring and the light. Right? If there's some kind of short circuit in the wiring of the lights, then that particular contractor might be responsible. And of course, like you pointed out earlier, neighboring unit, whether those people have. So those are proper defendants. Most of the time, a lawsuit is required to enforce your legal rights. Right from a lawsuit, there are sort of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms like mediation, community mediation, for example. You can even refer it to the Singapore Mediation Council for binding neutral evaluation. That's possible as well. It takes place in a private environment, and a very senior lawyer or judge will decide who's right and who's wrong. But it doesn't have the scrutiny of the public when that happens. It's newspapers. Yeah, so those broadly would be targets and your recourses.
What proportion of folks, Justin, are actually aware of the legal protections available to them, the ones you've just described?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Most of the people, from my experience, most of the people who approach me for these matters already have some level of knowledge. Today with ChatGPT, with Google, there's always partial information on it. So I believe our public is fairly well educated on the recourses.
All right. David, coming back to you, you've spoken to residents after these fires. From the intel you've gathered on the ground, what does life in the aftermath look like for the affected families?
I think we have to first think of fires not as an individual household kind of thing. It does affect the whole community. So when I speak to these neighbors who are affected, most of the time, if they're further away, it's still okay, right? It's mainly because your house has a lot of smoke and the smell of smoke. And then you're just like, okay, I'll just find somewhere else to stay for the time being. Most of them stay if they're in-laws or, family. But if you're in the direct units above, or maybe next to the affected units where the fire happened, it can be a bit more painful because the smoke and fire may spread into your house, and even if the fire does not affect your house, the smoke can get in and basically turn your whole place black. The cleanup is a nightmare. For a lot of them, they struggle to find out, can I make claims on the cleanup, or if some of my things are damaged from the heat, how do I make those claims? And so these are the kind of things that they kind of have to grapple with, and we don't really talk that much about it because most of the time the news is focused on, this unit was very, very badly burnt. People here may have been very badly affected. But the neighbors themselves also, I think they have to come together as a whole community to rebuild that part of their lives. Just losing the place where you're supposed to sleep for the night is something that is very difficult for people to deal with.
Let's ask the legal expert about things like claiming for heat from smoke. Justin, how do victims go about claiming for such things?
Well, everything is linked to the question of damage, right? What damage have you suffered? So if, for example, you are a victim of smoke inhalation, right, then what would be required is find a doctor that will catalog and give an opinion on your so-called injuries. Have you suffered any long-term damage to your lungs, for example? Or if you have lost consciousness, you've fallen down, what are the contusions? What is the damage there? So that is what you will be looking to recover. But in line with that, I think one thing which must be said is, what's your insurance coverage like? Because before you consider all this contentious litigation or mediation, are there any self-help measures? Can you report to the relevant insurance company, whether you have HDB insurance covering the movables and the interior, or you have personal injury insurance, which covers injury to you?
Let's talk about the length of the dispute resolution cases or lawsuits in this case. How long do they take to materialize? How many of these cases are actually successful?
I don't have the figures on every single construction case that has gone to trial. It's probably a mixed bag. I haven't done the number crunching, so to speak.
Sure, but based on your experience, how do these cases typically pan out?
If you're talking about time, it usually takes between 15 to 18 months to see the inside of room. But having said that, a lot of disputes nowadays are resolved at the mediation. As in, you file a lawsuit, they file the defense or counterclaim, what have you, and then the court sets it down for mediation. The mediator doesn't decide who is right and who's wrong. The mediator just decides whether you can reach across the table and shake hands.
All right, one final question for the two of you. I'll start with David. If there's one fire safety habit or precaution households should adopt immediately, what would it be, David?
Have a fire extinguisher at home.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right. Short and sweet. Justin, if a neighbor believes their home was damaged by someone else's fire, what practical steps should they take first?
Okay, let me just start with this, and I'm sorry to my learned friends for saying this, but litigation is expensive. So there are certain cost-efficient methods that can be done. I think first port of call would be to reach out to the town council, and say, this has happened. The town council, in most cases, should be able to assist. Number two, there's that mediation route that I spoke about. And number three, start the lawsuit. Those are broadly your options.
Oh, thank you very much to the both of you. We've been talking about fire-related deaths on the rise in Singapore. Numbers this year already outpacing previous years. Why have they been happening? And also exploring the question of accountability, including what rights residents have if their homes are damaged. David Sun is a crime correspondent at the Straits Times. Justin Chan is managing partner at Justin Chan Chambers LLP. Thank you both for your time and insights this morning.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Stay with Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.